No, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna do a video. Man, killing me. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. So I do have a game from the FIDE World Cup. This is taken from round one. This is game 2. And it is between Baadur Jobava of Georgia and Abhimanyu Mishra from the United States. The world's all-time youngest grandmaster in history. He beat Sergei Karyakin had the record before him for the youngest grandmaster, and he just broke it. So the youngest in history. As always, my people in the Philippines, I will say mabuhay, kamusta na, masaya kang makinig muli. Let me see, magandang umaga to you guys, because it will be morning when you take a look at this, or afternoon, magandang hapon. And I did learn a few phrases in Georgian. This is my first time presenting somebody from Georgia, and I do not personally have any Georgian friends, so this is me extending my languages out. So I have hello, which is Baadur Jobava, and then I have thank you, which is Madloba. Yes. And so I appreciate you guys very much if you are coming from Georgia, or if you do speak Georgian. Appreciate you guys coming by and stopping by and taking a look at my video. If you guys are ready to go, let's take a look, see what we have for the game. So we have e4, c5, we have c3. So we have the Sicilian defense, the Alapin variation. Very common way of playing. I mean, you're just intending to push d4, and you want to take back, with a pawn. The main idea behind the Sicilian defense as black is to basically trade off one of white's center pawns for one of your wing pawns, and then just to like preserve your own nice pawn center. That's just, this is kind of white's way of trying to kind of do what black is trying to do, just in reverse. So we do see knight to f6. Now we have kind of a little bit of an issue with this e4 pawn, so we do push it to e5. We see knight to d5. We see d4. Pawn takes d4. Queen takes d4. Which I'm not sure if it's a main line or not, but it's definitely like a little bit more natural to take with the c pawn. Like I said before, it just gives you that nice pawn center. So you've kind of given black what they want. I mean, you're still fine. I mean, it's not like you're losing or anything, but the intended purpose of playing c3 is so that you can take back with the pawn. So anyways, we see e6. We see bishop to c4. So we have to have some aggressive play by black, because, we're just literally threatening just to remove this knight and just win us a pawn. So we do see knight to c6. We have queen over to e4. We have d6, pawn takes d6, and then we have knight back to f6, and then we have queen down to e2. Now, it's not bad for white, but like, look at how many times the queen moved. The queen moved like 3 separate times. So that's not, there are certain situations where you can move the queen, a few times and still be okay, but don't get in the habit of playing the game like that, because you're going to end up moving your queen a bunch of times and it's going to get attacked, and then you're going to, if you don't know how to handle these particular situations that come up with the queen, you can definitely end up losing the queen. So be careful when you're moving the queen a lot. We do see bishop takes d6. We see bishop to g5, and then we see h6, which is the novelty of the game. It's very interesting because it is a very, very common move to play whenever you have a pin, a h6, h3, a6, a3 situation is pretty common, but this is the novelty as of today or yesterday, whenever they played the game. We see bishop takes f6. We got queen taking f6, knight to d2. We see queen back to e7. So you see black is kind of doing their own queen movements here, but we're still good. Knight g to f3. We see b6, castles by white, long castles by white, bishop to b7, and then we see knight to e4. And then we have long castles for black. And you can basically see that both white and black have both done everything that they needed to do. They have all of their pieces out, their rooks are connected and stuff like that. And then just backing up here, bishop to f4, just kind of getting a little Zwischenzug move was legitimate as well. Just basically make the king step over to b1. And then you castle on the king side. This was all fine too. It ends up pretty much being the same thing. Maybe slightly better for black, but nothing crazy. But like I said, we do see long castles by black. We see knight takes d6, rook takes d6, and then we have bishop to a6. We see rook h to d8, bishop takes b7 with check. Anytime you check your opponent, they're going to have to respond in a few different ways. So, I mean, it makes it pretty easy to calculate like what the, responses are going to be. So the king takes b7. We see g3. King comes over to c7. We have h4. Now, h4, it might seem random that h4 is being played, but, I mean, it's actually very legitimate because you are wanting to try to get h5 in because it's just going to have, it's just going to kind of give you like a little bit more advantageous endgame because it is going to be freezing these pawns and, just have your pawn as far advanced as possible. So, that's what you want to do. When you're getting into an endgame, you want your pieces and your position to be as far advanced as possible. And it does make it a lot easier for your king to move around when it has more space. So we do see rook takes d1 with check, rook takes d1, rook takes d1. Then we have queen taking d1. And we have reached a point in the game that if you do want to stop and guess what black plays in this position, go ahead and do so. All right, cool. So, it's not like anything spectacular. As you guys can see, like, I mean, the position is fairly even. There's pretty much the same material for each side. We have a knight each and a queen. But one thing that you should notice if you're black is that you do have an undefended pawn here on f2. And so the best move in the position for black is actually queen to c5, just placing an attack on that pawn right here. So if you found queen to c5, that's good. You're not only centralizing your queen, but you're attacking this undefended pawn over here. So now white has like, they have to respond to this now. So we see queen to e2. We see g5 because, we don't, like I was mentioning before, white intends to try to play h5. After like, let's say moving the knight somewhere down here, whatever, maybe putting like a little counterattack on this queen over here. And then we have the ability to push the pawn. So black does not want to allow that. So we see g5, pawn taking g5, pawn taking g5. Then we see knight down to d2. But as you can see, the position is greatly changed. You don't have the situation where this pawn is going to be freezing your own pawn. So we see g4. And you see black is basically doing what white was working on trying to do with that h-pawn. They somewhat have these pawns frozen, but it's artificial in this particular position because you can just take on g4, but then you allow black to take on f2. We see queen to f3, just offering a trade of queens. And it's something that you really kind of have to oblige white on because it is now blocking your ability to protect your f7 pawn. So you're pretty much forced to go into this trade. Queen takes f3, knight takes f3. We see king down to d6. We got king to d1. We see f5, and we're trying to prevent g4. So as you guys can see, like when you get into certain positions of the game, like what you're, I mean, it's actually can be the case like in all, phases of the game. Like you're trying to prevent what your opponent's trying to do. You have your own plans and your own ideas, but you do want to like prevent whatever your opponent can try to do and try to keep him as immobile as possible. So that's what f5 is doing. It's preventing this pawn from being able to push and cause any type of havoc or even just queen. So we do see king to e2. We see e5. Knight down to d2. We see knight to e7. We see a3. Knight comes to d5. We kick the knight with c4. Knight comes to f6. But, I mean, black has improved their knight. So it's not like they lost a lot. Their knight started off on this square, and now they're a little bit further down with knight to f6. So they're just, like, influencing the position just a little bit more. So as you can see, it's in games, there are a lot of maneuvering and stuff like that going on. So we see b4. e4 comes. We see knight to b3. King to e5. We see a4. Knight comes to h5, forcing king to f2. We see f4. We see pawn takes f4. Knight takes f4. We see king up to e3. We see knight down to d3. We see b5. And b5 is the best move in the position, but I mean it does kind of freeze your own pawns a little bit. But there's not a lot better. You have to try to force your way through somehow while making it impossible for black to move. So that's one way to do it. So we see knight down to b2. We have knight to d2, knight down to d1 with check, king comes to e2. We see knight to c3 with check. We see king to e3. We see knight takes a4, knight takes e4. We have knight to c5. We see knight to g5. We see a5. Pawn takes a6 en passant, and we see knight takes a6. And it is in this position that the players agree to a draw. The first game that these guys played together, Mishra did lose the game. So when he became the youngest grandmaster in history, his first game after that was a loss. So, you know, that can be disappointing. Like, you just became GM and you're like, man, okay, like you did all the requirements and stuff, and now you're GM, and then you lose the first game. But, you know, he was able to draw this game. It was pretty computer-like play from both players pretty much the entire game. You know, they both pretty much played like either the top 1 or 2 moves, 3 moves in a position. And so it was really hard for either player to get an advantage. And that's kind of like, you know, what you see sometimes. You know, players are just so evenly matched. And I mean, that's just how it ends up. But I appreciate you guys very much. For my people that are coming from Georgia, Madloba and Meroming Salamat, Aking Makaibigan, and Makita Tayo Mamaya. I think pretty sure that's how you say it. Makita Tayo Mamaya, yeah. Makita Tayo Mamaya. I'm getting it. So I appreciate my guy that was giving me that whole explanation on exactly how to say that. You know, I appreciate stuff like that a lot whenever I try to say something. You know, people come back and they can give me like a full explanation to just help me kind of tweak. Because as you guys know, I speak a crap load of languages. English is my native language. So all of these other languages that I attempt are all foreign languages to me. So I'm not sure like the phonetics and exactly how things are supposed to sound. I have Google and YouTube, so that definitely helps a lot. But, you know, it also helps when people, you know, help tweak. So, you know, if you do speak Georgian and I'm not saying these words completely correctly, feel free to let me know and I'll work on it. But I appreciate you guys and I'll see you guys next time.